your PhD Viva, your thesis defence. Do those words make you shudder? Do they bring about a creeping sense of dread? No one goes skipping into their Viva, singing songs from the musicals. That's not a thing. Most people feel nervous. It is completely normal to be anxious. A Viva, a thesis defence, this is a big deal. It comes at the end of several years of hard work. And there are a panel of experts ready to put you through your paces about it. So yeah, gulp. It's the big day. However, it is not supposed to be awful. Your examiners are going to ask you some tough questions. They're going to challenge you about the choices you made during your project. They're going to challenge you about the findings that you came away with and your interpretation of those findings. But unless you have struck seriously unlucky and have a psychopath as an examiner, they don't want you to fail. None of your examiners are plotting your demise. They want you to succeed. So how can you maximise your chances of success? Well, stay tuned because I've got 6 tips to help you do that. I've summarised all of these tips in this handy PDF guide. You can grab yours by clicking on the link that's appearing on screen right now, or by clicking on the link in the description later. You're welcome. If we've not met before, hi, I'm Dr. Elizabeth Yardley, and I've got 20 years experience of supporting social science graduate students through their dissertations. I've prepared students for PhD Vivas, I've been an examiner, I've chaired Vivas. And in that time, I have seen so many students coming out of their PhD Viva or their thesis defence, saying something along the lines of, "Oh, I actually really enjoyed that." I know, right? That is 100% possible. So let's get on to the first tip. Prepare sensibly. Prepare for the obvious questions that you're going to be asked, but don't drive yourself completely crazy trying to predict the others. Some PhD students try to predict every single question that their examiners are going to ask them. And this is just not possible. There are some really obvious questions that you should prepare for, like, can you start by summarising your thesis? What's the central idea of your thesis? What inspired you to carry out this research? What are the main issues and debates in this subject area? There are another 16 of these questions in the PDF guide I mentioned at the start, just saying. So you've got the obvious questions, try and prepare some answers for them. However, don't try to prepare and revise for every possible question. I've come across a few students in my time who have tried to anticipate every single question they're going to be asked in their PhD Viva, and they've not stopped there. What they've then done is they've gone away and they've prepared these heavily scripted answers to those questions, and they have learned them off by heart in order to be able to parrot them back to the examiner in the Viva. That never goes well. Firstly, because the examiner never asks them any of those questions. And secondly, trying to script and revise incredibly lengthy answers to questions made them feel really stressed out and uptight. The best responses will be the ones that you give right off the bat in the Viva. It's highly unlikely that there'll be questions that you're completely clueless about. Because you're an expert on this now. Yes, you are. Your imposter syndrome might be telling you otherwise, but trust me, you know your stuff. Now, there may be questions that you don't have an immediate answer to, and there's a really easy way to deal with those, but we'll get onto that later. Now, let's take a look at tip number 2. One practical way to prepare and feel really good going into your Viva is to mark up your thesis. If you're taking a hard copy of your thesis into your Viva, make sure that you use sticky notes and coloured tabs and highlighters to flag up important sections and pages. This very simple step can save you a lot of time in your Viva when you're trying to find a specific part of your thesis. For those of you who are going into your Viva with a laptop or an electronic copy of your thesis, use electronic tools to achieve the same effect. Most PDF softwares allow you to highlight things, make comments, and create digital bookmarks. Familiarise yourself with these features, make sure you know how they work, and then use them to create a navigable digital copy of your thesis. This way, it's easier to locate particular figures, sections, or tables during your Viva. By doing this, you're going to be able to respond to questions in your Viva more swiftly and accurately. This can significantly reduce stress because you're not going to be fumbling through pages or scrolling endlessly on your device. That is really annoying for your examiners, and it's going to make you feel even more flustered. Remember, your Viva is your opportunity to shine, and this is a really easy win that you can achieve going into your Viva that's going to reduce the friction during the actual exam itself. And don't underestimate what a significant difference this extra layer of preparation can make it can help you go into your Viva feeling so much more confident. Now, before we get on to tip 3, I really want to hear from you in the comments. Tell me when your PhD Viva or thesis defence is. Is it coming up soon? Have you got a few months? Is it next year? Let me know. Tip number 3 is to manage your expectations. There are different outcomes for a PhD Viva or a thesis defence, which are going to vary from one university to the next. However, it's likely to be some combination like pass with no corrections, pass with minor corrections, pass with major corrections, resubmit the thesis, fail. Don't fixate too much on the outcome. The only one that you don't want is fail. But in my experience, outright failure at your first Viva is really rare. If you've made it as far as the Viva with the support of your supervisors, if they are happy with your thesis, then outright failure is not very likely. And for students who don't quite make the grade, who don't quite reach that PhD standard in the Viva, they're probably going to be given a chance to resubmit. But what I've come to find incredibly irritating, especially in recent years, is this pressure that PhD students feel to pass with no corrections or pass with minor corrections. You see so many people who are like, I passed with no corrections, or the only change I had to make was a referencing error. Good for you, love. Well done. It's gotten a whole lot worse in the age of social media. There's this incredibly performative, highly curated element to PhD life now. And the PhD Viva, thesis defence show-offs can make you feel like a massive failure if you've got more than a couple of minor corrections to do. But remember, 2, 5, 10, 20 years from now, the kind of pass that you got in your PhD Viva, it's not going to matter. What will matter is the fact you have your PhD. Nobody is going to care whether you pass with no corrections or whether you pass with majors. You will be a doctor, and that is seriously cool. So well done to people who pass with no corrections or who pass with minors. That is great. But for those who didn't, this doesn't mean you failed. Passing with majors is still passing. Also, one thing that examiners sometimes do is they will give you major corrections rather than minor corrections. That is the outcome that they'll record, simply because they want to give you more time to make those changes. Examiners are human. Most of them are nice people. So if they're aware of the fact that you have a full-time job or caring responsibilities and it's going to take you a while to make changes to your thesis, they might be more likely to give you majors rather than minors because they know that that's going to take the pressure off you. Now, the difference between majors and minors is going to vary depending on your institution, but say, for example, minor corrections, you get that at the end of your Viva, and you're told you've got 6 weeks to make those corrections versus the 6 months that you might get if you got majors. That's going to make a significant difference for someone who's got a lot on their plate, who's got a lot of responsibilities. So sometimes the decision to award majors is actually based on your capacity to make those changes in time. It's based on the examiner having some sympathy, having some empathy with you. Now, let's take a look at the last 3 tips. Tip number 4, you are the expert now, so own that cautiously. When you go into your Viva, you are an authority on your PhD research topic. You know your stuff and you should 100% own that. However, there is a fine balance to strike between confidence and arrogance, so tread carefully. Don't be afraid to defend the choices and the decisions that you made during your research. Don't concede too easily or automatically defer to your examiner. They want to see some passion, they want to see some oomph, but just don't be too spicy. The people who are examining you will likely crop up at various points during your career. And you don't want to be remembered as that student who got a little bit too big for their boots in their Viva. So be nice, be respectful. Tip number 5, during the Viva, don't be afraid to ask for what you need. In your Viva, there will be rules and processes that you need to follow, and the chairperson will outline those at the start. However, don't be afraid to ask for what you need. If you need an examiner to repeat or rephrase a question, ask them to do that. If you need time to answer a question or have the examiner come back to that question later, that is absolutely fine. You shouldn't be afraid to ask for that. Most examiners are totally reasonable and they'll be like, yeah, let's circle back to that in a while. If you need a comfort break, ask for one. Sometimes examiners don't realise how much time has passed during a Viva. So if you need a breather, speak up about that. I've been in this position a few times when I've been examining. I've been firing through a list of questions and before I know it, 2 hours has passed and I'm just completely unaware of that fact and all of the other people in the room are just wilting. And it's taken me a while to realise that and I've been like,
oh, sorry, does anyone need a comfort break?
And sometimes I've been one of those people who've been wilting. You can take the initiative, you can ask for the break, and the other people on the panel are probably going to be very grateful for that. They'll be sitting there thinking, oh my goodness, I really wanted to go to the bathroom and I didn't want to be the one to ask for a break, so thank you, thank you. Lastly, tip number 6, enjoy it. Your PhD Viva, your thesis defence, whilst intimidating, whilst nerve-wracking, it is something that you should actively enjoy for the following reasons. You get to talk about your research for quite some time with people who are genuinely interested and invested in it. Your family and friends are likely completely sick of hearing about your research by now, if they even understand it at all. So your Viva is a golden opportunity to talk about it. Your examiners, these people have read every page of your thesis. They believe your research matters. They believe that what you have to contribute is important. They would not have agreed to examine you if they didn't. And whenever I talk to PhD students about this, they say, well, the examiners are getting paid to do this. Yes, they are. But the amount that they are paid for carrying out a PhD Viva, a PhD thesis defence, is actually quite small when you take into account the amount of hours, the amount of days that it's going to take them to get through your thesis and do it properly. They are not doing it for the money, trust me. They're doing it because they're excited about your research. They genuinely care about your contribution to the discipline. Very rarely in life do we get the opportunity to really get into it about something niche and specialist that we are super passionate about with other people who are equally as passionate about it. So enjoy it. Popping up on your screen right now is another video that I think you're really going to like because it's about something I mentioned earlier. Imposter syndrome. You have really got to sort that out before your PhD Viva, and this video is full of tips on exactly how you can do that, so go and check it out. I'll see you there.